Life for most of us is a struggle. Life for most of us has so many unanticipated turns and events that if we knew our future, we might have said, God, I don't think I want to participate in that. But with God, we can face these uncertain times. I remember one time my mom and I were reminiscing about things in my past. I said, Mom, you never knew this. When I was a teenager and I was working with Bill and Kelly down at the restaurant, one night we smoked cigars. You didn't know that. And I came home and you didn't say a word. She says, I didn't have to. You were so sick. You were practically green. I knew you would never do it again. So a little wisdom there. When do we discipline and when do we just say they learned their lesson? Wisdom comes into that. But seriously, to you mothers, we know that not all of you have had a joyous time. Sometimes Mother's Day reminds you perhaps of a death of a child. Maybe a child has cut off a relationship with you and there's some pain, and we're sorry for that. And the reality is our world is not what God wanted it to be. And you would think that the God who spoke the world into existence could make everything work out the way it should. But the reality is that he gave us, it's almost like a loaded gun. It's called free will. He's allowed us to make decisions and do what we want to do. And he's hoping that we'll not hurt ourselves with our free will, but unfortunately, we live in a world today that is on edge. The world doesn't love life. We have debates politically about abortion. We have political debates about euthanasia, killing the useless people. The useless people like old people, useless people that have handicaps, useless people that don't produce something for our society. They're not pretty enough, they're not smart enough, they're not talented enough, and for a lot of people in our world, they would just get rid of them. But God, he loves every one of us. He loves those that are brilliant, he loves those that are not. God loves every one of us. And so as we think about how to build our lives, what it's like to be, for you, a mother, let's look at a couple things from Scripture. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but through me. And so there's a truth there that we need to accept. Well, I need to use a larger font and put less on a... That is kind of useless, isn't it? Anyway, we'll deal with that next time. Jesus, in talking with Pilate, said, my kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place. You are a king then, said Pilate. You say that I'm a king. In fact, the reason I was born is I came into the world to testify to the truth. And everyone on the side of truth listens to me. Look at Pilate's response. What is truth? So as we think about how to build our lives as men, as women, as a couple, as a family, raising children, what truth are you going to believe about how you should live? Because let me tell you something, it makes a big difference. It makes a huge difference what you believe. Our society is confused, and it's beyond debate. Today they have this transitioning language going on about becoming a different sex. We can't even accept that God created male and female. Are we messed up as a society or what? We're all messed up. And we've got to come back to God before anything can be turned around. Jesus wants you to have a quality life. He wants you to be a respectable man, a lovely woman. He wants you to have a fulfilling marriage. Who goes into marriage wanting it to fail? But how many go into marriage not realizing what they just entered into? And he wants you to raise godly children. In Genesis 1, it talks about the creation. It says that God created mankind in his own image. You were created in the image of God. Maybe you're a bit tarnished, okay? Maybe there's a little dross on it. But bottom line, we were all created in the image of God. And he goes on to say at the end of chapter 1, and God saw all that he'd made, and it was very good. That was where we started out. The second chapter of Genesis is similar, and it says that we were not meant to be alone, and so he created woman. And it says, this is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. It's one flesh, one mind, one unit that takes real effort. God created us male and female. We were created in his image. You were created very good. And ideally, everyone will marry. I know that can be a challenge. I was single one time. I remember that. And waiting for the right person, and am I being too critical? Am I being too lenient? It's an unsettling time. But I think most of you here, if you'll just depend on God, he'll bless you with that. Well, what went wrong? In the garden in Genesis 3, the serpent approached Eve and said, did God really say you must not eat of any tree in the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat the fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say you must not eat fruit from the tree that's in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it or you will die. You will not surely die, the serpent said to the woman, for God knows that when you eat it, from your eyes will be opened, and then you'll be like God, knowing good and evil. Why is it that we are attracted to knowing evil? And you know what? We are attracted to knowing evil. If you look at the movies, you can't even see a Disney movie anymore without a G rating. They've got to put some edge to it. And so somehow we are corrupted inside. So the woman saw that the fruit was good for food, pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom. And so she took some and ate it. She rationalized away what God had clearly said. She knew what was right and wrong. And maybe the serpent's right. I'm not going to die. And I'll gain knowledge. But not realizing what she'd done. And then, of course, Adam ate as well and rebelled. They rebelled together. And so the fall of man, this is where free will came into play and humanity blew it. This is the point at which our life takes a twist, and we make those same decisions every day. We know what the truth is, we know what we should do, and we violate our own convictions and disobey God. And so while we can look back and say, Eve, why did you do that? You messed up everybody. Well, the reality is, had we been back there, I would have done it and you would have done it. Okay? Maybe it's a different sin. But the bottom line is we're defective when we don't depend on God. Genesis 4, it says, Adam made love to his wife Eve, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. And she said, with the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man. and later she gave birth to his brother Abel. All excited. Got 2 boys. Got 2 boys. Oh, Eve, you don't know what lies ahead of you. Did you know children complicate your life? Did you know that a married couple, when they have children, oh, this is awesome. And it is for a while, and then reality sets in. And the sleepless nights and the changing of diapers and the desire to go out and do something, and you got no money left at the end of the week, and your life has changed. And then maybe the baby's not healthy, it's in the hospital longer. There's so many things that get complicated when children come along. Well, in this case, something serious happened. It says that Abel kept the flocks, Cain worked the soil, and in the course of time, Cain brought some fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. And Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. And the Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at the door, and it desires to have you, but you must master it." And so we all face temptations, and Cain's at a point of decision. What am I going to do? Am I going to believe God? It'll be all right if I do what is right? Or am I going to just be angry? And how many things have you personally done in anger that turned out well? Probably not a lot. Our anger gets us into all kinds of trouble. Well, it ended up that Cain killed Abel. And so I think it's fair to say that the first family was dysfunctional. Okay? The first family was dysfunctional. And that's a hard reality, because we go into marriage and we go into the idea of having a family, and, we don't think about it being, not right. We expect everything to be perfect. We expect it to just be smooth. We expect everything to go well, and that just isn't reality. Well, if the first family had problems, so will yours. And so did your mothers that we celebrate today. Your mother struggled, and there were times when she pulled her hair out. Even the perfect you caused your mom to pull her hair out. So what do? Well, we need to start with building a relationship, okay? So I need the men to pursue God. I need women to pursue God. Now, Paul gives advice here in Ephesians chapter 5. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Now, what's interesting is verse 21 used to be before the title heading about advice to Christian families. It was kind of like this was supposed to be the lead-in, submit to one another. And so you just jump right into verse 22, and it says, "Wives, submit to your husbands." Well, that gives a distortion. It says submit to each other. Not just wives to husbands, but both of you. Now, I tend to think that Paul said, and by the way, wives, in case you didn't get it, wives, submit to your own husbands. But it's a responsibility of both of you. It says, for the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, of which he is the Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. And sometimes there's this rivalry about who's going to be in control, but submission to each other helps resolve those differences. And it isn't a situation where, well, you get to do it this time and I'll get my way next time. It's got to be revolving around truth. What's best? How do we resolve these situations that come up? Verse 25 says, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Now, who got the tougher task? Wives, submit to your husbands? Or husbands, love your wives like Christ loved the church? I think Jesus was crucified, right? So when you look at these, the advice to the husband is just as challenging as the advice to the wife. Love your wife as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with water through the word, and to present her to himself as a radiant church without stain or wrinkle or other blemish, but holy and blameless. In this way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. After all, no one ever hated their own body, but they feed it and take care of their body, just as Christ does the church. For we are members of his body. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. It's a profound mystery, but I'm talking about Christ and the church. However, each of you must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. You know, here's a little scriptural secret. Love means more to women, and respect means more to men. Men can deal with not being loved. You know, sometimes we're emotionally like flat, but we pick up on a lack of respect. And so we have different needs, and women want to be loved. Men want to be respected, and that's what here Paul is saying. So submit to each other. Wives, submit to your husbands. Husbands, love your wives. How tough is it to love? 1 Corinthians 13:4-7. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. That's a pretty challenging definition of love. And our world has a definition of love that's totally emotional. It's how you feel, but here Paul lays it out. This is a challenge. And I would say that us men, if we loved our wives in this way, it would revolutionize our married life. He says, make her holy by cleansing her through the word. Guys, how well do you know the word? How well do you know the Bible? And I'm amazed at guys that can know everything. I was going to use an analogy of a car. When I was growing up, everybody always knew the latest in the cars, whether it's a V8, what size V8, a transmission, and we knew all that stuff. And yet we couldn't learn the Bible. I think today it's probably what kind of technology is latest. You know, you're probably more aware of that. But guys, we can learn the word. We've got to set the example in learning the word. And so, wives, respect your husbands. And men, love your wives. Wives need love. Men need respect. Now, there's a verse in 2 Corinthians 6. It says, do not be yoked together with unbelievers. For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness? Now, some of you young gals are single, and I want to encourage you not to compromise. Because I can assure you that if you marry somebody that isn't a believer in Jesus, who hasn't committed their life to Jesus, that marriage will not have a deep enough root to last. And if it does last, you will be miserable. If you do have children, they won't come out to love God. And so Paul's giving you advice here. You think, man, that's for what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Well, you don't know this guy. He's really a good guy. Or woman. Or what fellowship can light have with darkness? That is the contrast. That's why it's like mixing oil and water. To a person that's committed to Jesus, your expectation that you can be united with somebody that is going to be a helpmate to you in your life, it's a dream. It's naive. And so he's warning us in a strict way here. It's interesting, this verse I think also applies to other things like being in business with an unbeliever, but for sure it applies to marriage. So I'm going to encourage you, whether you're a single guy or a single girl, don't compromise. Wait on God. You know, we have an expression here in the U.S. About making it happen. I'm going to make it happen. And you go out and you can get married, but is it going to be God honoring? Marrying an unbeliever is spiritual suicide. So we do encourage you, if you want to build a quality life, if you want to be a mother that is going to come out at the end of it proud of what she's built, then we want to encourage you to seek a spiritual guy. Perhaps the most amazing chapter on women is in Proverbs 31. It's kind of a long reading. The wife of noble character. A wife of noble character, who can find? She's worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She selects wool and flax and works with her eager hands. She's like the merchant ships, bringing her food from afar. She gets up while it is still night. She provides food for her family and portions for her female servants. She considers a field and buys it, and out of her earnings she plants a vineyard. She sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her task. She sees that her trading is profitable and her lamp does not go out at night. In her hand she holds the distaff and grasps a spindle with her fingers. My program cut off a verse, so go back and read verse 20. When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. She makes coverings for her bed. She is clothed in fine linen and purple. Her husband is respected at the city gate, where he takes a seat among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them and supplies the merchants with sashes. She's clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children arise and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Honor her for all that her hands have done, and let her works give her praise at the city gate. So let's look at just a few of these. Let's revisit what the writer said. Her husband has full confidence in her. You know, guys, we can help our wives a lot by being confident in her ability to handle things. Confidence is a major plus. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. Ladies, hold your tongue. Don't share negative things about your husband just idly as gossip. She opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. Let me just say, this woman here has a view of life that extends beyond her family. And sometimes we can just get so family-oriented, that's all we're concerned about. But there's people out there that need help. Her husband is respected at the city gate, where he takes his seat among the elders of the land. She's clothed with strength and dignity, and she can laugh at the days to come. Why is that? It's because she's depending on God. God knows the future. She's being led by God through the Word, through the Spirit. Verse 26, she speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. Where do you think that wisdom and instruction comes from? I'm willing to bet it's this. Something that's proven. It's amazing how many times we look smart when we use the Bible. We look like the guy's really smart. No, Paul said it, and the Spirit told him. Her children arise and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Now, this is a touchy one for me to talk about. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting. My wife's going to be 58 this year. I'm 71. I'll be 72 this year, I hope, if I live that long. Charm is deceptive, beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. And I can tell you that my wife, Olga, loves Jesus. Okay? And it doesn't matter about charm, and it doesn't matter about beauty. And if that's what we're basically attracted to, that isn't going to last. Deuteronomy, let's talk about children a bit. Because what we're trying to talk about here this morning is we got to build a man, we got to build a woman, we got to build a marriage. Now let's talk about children. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands, bind them on your foreheads, write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. How much do you love God? Do you love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength? Unless you do, it's going to be difficult to pass that on. These commandments have got to be on our hearts. So when it comes to our children, we've got to be single-minded. We can't be double-minded in the way we view our faith with God. Impress them on your children. Talk about them. When you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, when you get up, write them on the door frames of your houses. In Ephesians, Paul says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Now, Arsini, our son here, he had this idea back in April or March to play a stunt at some event at the school. And let's just say his mom and I didn't agree with it. Now, Arsini is over 6 feet tall. He goes to the gym. He's 22 years old, almost 23, and he has the ability to say, I'll do what I want to. But you know what? We talked to him and said, we don't think this is a good idea. And he didn't do it. He respected us. And Arseni's been a wonderful son. We've been now together 8 years. And he came as a typical 14-year-old. And we had a wonderful life together. But it says here that children, obey your parents in the Lord, for it's right. Oh, he wanted to do it. He even ordered all the parts on Amazon, got it, and he showed it. He was so proud of it. Never did it. Now, he goes on to say, fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. There was a time earlier this year or into last year, I don't remember when it was, but I got really upset, out of bounds upset, and I had to apologize. And so I want to encourage you as men, fathers, don't frustrate your children. And he accepted my apology, and I think it was an important time. You see, fathers get out of line, mothers get out of line, children get out of line. This family thing is just, it's a bomb waiting to go off. And so what are we going to do? Are we going to be humble, submit to each other, learn the truth in the Word, do what God says? I think we might make it if we do that. So what does a successful life look like? If you base it on watching a movie, Sleepless in Seattle, it doesn't work that way. It takes us working together, praying together, resolving issues, hanging in there together. The famous speech by Winston Churchill to the graduating class at Cambridge after World War II was over was very short. He said, never, never, never quit. You're not going to improve your life by starting over, because the problem isn't the other person. The other person may be part of it, but you know what? You'll go to the next marriage, and you're going to mess that one up too. So we got to just hang in there. It's here, like it says in Ecclesiastes, iron sharpens iron. Have you ever sharpened a knife, especially on a rotating wheel? There's sparks flying. It isn't easy. And as we praise our mothers today, I know my mother went through a lot. Her mother died when her youngest brother was born, and she had to leave the state and go live with her aunts. And that isn't what God necessarily wanted. My wife, she was 38 years old. Let's see, I guess that's 20 years ago. Her husband died. A sad situation. He had 2 boys. 110, Arseni 4. That wasn't God's plan. God didn't put her husband Andrew in a nuclear submarine that the Soviet Union had to where he got leukemia by exposure to radiation. God didn't do that. But God was there to pick up the pieces. And I don't know what issue you will face in the future, but if you and your wife and your children will stay focused on God, you can get through it. And you'll be stronger for it. And you'll be the example that says to that other couple that's, 10 years behind you on the journey, and you'll say, I've been there. I know what it's like. And there is no solution in quitting. And I want to give you this warning. Our country, the United States of America, is bankrupt. And we are headed for some very, very difficult times. And I hope that you will focus on God. And I hope you will prepare. If you have any thoughts about buying a new car and getting a big loan out on it, don't do it. I had a friend one time, he called me, his name is Art, and he calls me up, he says, Randy, I'm at the Ford dealer, and I'm thinking of buying this big van, and you don't think I ought to do it, do you? No, Art, I don't think you ought to do it. I want to encourage you, don't get into debt. Strengthen your relationship. Don't be surprised at what's coming our way. And I don't want to be, I don't know what a guy is, but Debbie Downer. But the reality is we're facing some real problems. And they're going to test the mettle of your relationship and what you're able to overcome. So, let's be men worthy of respect. Let's be women worthy of respect. Let's be a family that is envied by others. And let's look after each other's spiritual needs, because that's what God wants us to do.